The student protest highlighted issues around economic inequality, the slow pace of transformation in general, institutionalized racism in society and on university campuses. So these debates have intensive, and the intensity of the responses displayed in the media have highlighted, as I suppose for many of us, some of the kind of problems or the fault lines of nation building and social cohesion in South Africa. The HSRC, the Human Sciences Research Council, really felt that it was important for us as a group to contribute to the public and intellectual discourse on racial inequality and racism through a series of public dialogues. Our objectives with these dialogues are fourfold. Firstly, to contribute constructively to the public debate on reconciliation, and to think about and to talk about how poverty and inequality intersects with race in post-apartheid South Africa. The second objective for these race dialogues is to create a space in which these issues can be discussed and debated, perhaps in a different kind of way, with a degree of depth that is not always possible in social media and other kinds of platforms. Thirdly, we wanted to kind of enter into these dialogues and to bring into these dialogues what is our strength as the HSRC, which is evidence and research, and so we want to disseminate knowledge and foreground our expertise and scholarship on these areas and hope that they can inform and shape the conversations that flow. And lastly, through these public debates, we wanted to allow different voices to be heard, with the overarching aim of bringing about change with regard to racial inequalities and racism in our country. We have put together a series of 4 panel discussions that will address an overarching theme, and that theme is about racial inequalities and racism in South Africa, history, mechanisms, and ideas for change. These events will be in Pretoria starting today, Cape Town, Durban, and Port Elizabeth, and will run over May and June. Each event will focus on a discrete set of questions. Those questions are really aimed at deepening the discussion and informing action and inviting the participation of many of you, academics, public intellectuals, scholars, civil society, and human rights practitioners, and a whole range of other stakeholders who've joined us today. Today's discussion is on the role of the media in this broader debate and discussion on race and racism in South Africa. And more specifically, we want to explore 3 things. How has race and racism come to be such a visible, pressing issue in our country in recent times, or at this time? What role has the media played in keeping racial domination in place? And thirdly, what role could the media play in dealing with race and racism that contributes to a broader project on social cohesion? So in between these 4 dialogues spread over these 2 months of May and June, and throughout the day today, we will ask you to tweet about the conversations. You have the details on your program, so if you don't have a program, please grab a program. It will give you the hashtag, and the hashtag that you could use is hashtag Racism Dialogues and hashtag racism. So please tweet away. We really want to keep the conversation going today in between the dialogues, and our hope and intention is that we will then reach a broader group outside of the limited confines of this space and begin to have a much broader conversation on this really important issue. We really also want to try and take the proceedings from today into other kinds of spaces. We hope to kind of write about what emerges from these 4 series of discussions through our HSRC review, which goes out to a range of stakeholders, including policymakers and government. We'd like to write about this in other kinds of academic fora as well. And our idea, and I think it is not just to write, but also to use these conversations to stimulate ideas for action, to think about how we as the HSRC could begin to be doing something about this particular issue. So that's all from me by way of background, and it gives me enormous pleasure to introduce our moderator for today, and to say welcome to our wonderful, wonderful panel. Our moderator today, you may recognize, is Ms. Siki. I've been practicing this.
Mgabadeli.
Mgabadeli. Siki, thank you so much. It really is an honor for us to have you moderate this panel discussion today. As you know, many of you may know, Siki is an acclaimed MC, a TV and radio personality. She's also very widely respected moderator and facilitator of events of this kind, both here in South Africa, in the region and internationally, and highly sought after. And she's moderated many discussions across a range of different kinds of groups, from government to businesses. But I think she's probably more well known to you, both her voice and both her face, in a number of other fora. She hosts, she's the daily anchor of SAfm Market Update with MoneyWeb. She's also the nightly business show. She also hosts the nightly business show Moneyline on ENCA. She also has hosted ENCA's Big Debate, and in fact it was her hosting of that big debate on race that actually prompted us to think we had to get her to be part of this race dialogue series. Siki's star is definitely on the rise. She's been listed on YouTube as one of the top 10 African journalists to watch. She's had twice been named the Sanlam Financial Journalist of the Year for television and was included in the Mail and Guardian Book of South African Women. She's also won the Telkom ICT Journalist of the Year Award for television. So we really are in good company, both with our esteemed panelists, who Siki will introduce, but also with you, Siki. So thank you very much for agreeing and for saying yes. She handled the last big debate really, really well. So I have great confidence if we start to get into a huge kind of messy fight here, that we've got the right pint-sized referee to moderate that. So please, ladies and gentlemen, warm welcome for Siki and our panelists.
Thank you very much to Heidi for that generous introduction. And I do hope we don't get into any fisticuffs. It feels like we've been having this conversation for a long time. I mean, we started this year with the likes of Penny Sparrow, we had Chris Hart, we had Matthew Tennyson, and lately we had Judge Mabel Jansen. And it feels like this is a dialogue and a conversation that is actually possibly 22 years too late, but it's never too late. We do need to talk about these things. So today, we're going to try and look at how we got here, or perhaps if we've ever left the place that we are in today. It seems there is much unfinished business in post-apartheid South Africa. This past year, of course, we saw a student protest which drew attention to economic inequality, the slow pace of transformation in general, and institutionalized racism in society, and of course on our campuses as well. Some commentators and activists, as you'll know, have called for an economic CODESA owing to the growing levels of inequality in South Africa and poverty. And some have called into question the reconciliation process in its entirety, in fact, and others have focused on the escalating tensions among races in South Africa. So what is clear, though, is that all of these issues are interrelated, that racial inequalities and racism have served to focus our country's attention on what really still needs to be done in order for us to bring about meaningful social change. So, as you heard from Heidi, today is one of 4 sessions that's going to be held around the country, and the HSRC has invited different thought leaders to really engage in this conversation, a meaningful one where we hope not only to impart thinking from the stage, but also to receive information from you in the room. So it's a conversation for all of us. It's not just us talking up here. I really want you to participate and engage in it. So today's format, very simple, and we want as much discussion as possible. So I'm going to give you opportunities throughout the next 2 hours or so to participate. Please put up your hand at any point, well, except for the first 25 minutes, at any point. If it's a comment, it doesn't have to be a question, it can be an observation, whatever it is that you'd like to contribute to this conversation, please share with us that. So our panelists here, which I'll introduce in a moment, each have 5 minutes just to give us their thinking on today's topic and the broader conversation that we're having in South Africa around race, racism, and inequality. Our panelists today, well known and need very little introduction. They are Justice Malala, who's a political commentator, newspaper columnist, and host of the Justice Factor on ENCA. Khadija Patel is a co-founder of the Daily Vox and an executive editor of that project. She previously worked at the Daily Maverick for 3 years, and before that published a community magazine that was distributed nationally. Angelo Fick is a resident current affairs and news analyst at ENCA. He has 2 decades of experience at teaching and researching across a variety of disciplines at universities here in South Africa and in Europe. And Piet Rampedi is an award-winning investigative and political journalist who currently edits and publishes African Times news website. He's also the president of the Forum of Journalists for Transformation. Please welcome our panel. Right.